Dad rifles, no skill rifles, the camping rifles, whatever you call them. Pulse rifles are very good. They are some of the best primary weapons in the game, and that is due to their incredible variety. They can do long range, medium range, they aren't too hot in the close range, but I guess you can cope. There are an incredible amount of relevant pulse rifles, and I'll be ranking every single one of them in a tier list. If you haven't already seen my other tier list, I've already gone through the hand cannons, the pellet shotguns, and the slug shotguns. So the format for this video is going to be very similar to those ones, so they might be worth a look if you are interested in those weapon types. And a quick disclaimer before we go into this, I do play on mouse and keyboard. I used to play on controller for many years, so I can still give some decent insight for that input device, but this list will mainly be focused around mouse and keyboard. But there aren't many pulses which are better on the other input device, but I will definitely mention when they are. One thing that I don't really mention for each pulse rifle on this list is the recoil direction. Bungie did change the recoil direction system quite a bit back. I think it was the launch of Season of the Deep, so any weapons released during or after that season, they have deterministic recoil. Anything released before that season had the same system where you'd want the recoil direction to be ending in 5, and of course you wanted it to be as high as possible. So 65 recoil is better than 70 on those weapons, but of course 75 is also better than 70 and 65. However, now that has changed. For example, on LC's rifle, 85 recoil direction feels great, but 85 might feel terrible on blast furnace. Another thing to note, 95 feels terrible on LC's rifle. Despite it being higher than 85, it still feels worse. Every weapon is different, so you're really going to have to test every single weapon and their different combos of barrels and counterbalance stock. So you just have to try different combinations to see what different recoil directions you can get and which one shoots the most vertical. Again, that's only weapons released after or during Season of the Deep. That also does include the reprised weapons. Now, I don't break down each and every single pulse's recoil direction, otherwise the video would end up being like 2 hours long. But if you guys want, I can do a counterbalance stock breakdown in the future. Just let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to make that. Now, before we waste any more time, let's get into the tier list. I'm going to be going archetype by archetype. There are quite a few different archetypes of pulses, so I'm going to be going from what I think to be the worst archetype to the best. And honestly, I do believe that the worst frame of pulses is the lightweight frames. This archetype will give you 20 mobility and a 6.25% sprint speed increase. The base optimal time to kill, or TTK, on these pulses is 0.67 seconds on any Guardian 3 resilience or higher. The forgiveness isn't too bad, but it's not too good either. You're going to have to be 87.5% accurate in terms of headshot to body shot ratio on anyone which is 6 resilience or higher, and in the current meta we're in, that's essentially every single opponent. And for some reason, these lightweight weapons just don't feel very good. The TTK isn't bad by any means, but the shots just don't feel as good as the other pulses. Now, with all of that being said, let's rank our first pulse rifle. We're going to be looking at the Ogma PR6 from the World Loot Pool. Banshee can sell this gun and you can focus it directly, but to be honest, I would not bother. This thing essentially only has one good perk across its entire perk pool, that being perpetual motion. The stats on this thing suck and it feels pretty bad, primarily because it's a lightweight frame. Not much else is really needed to be said about this gun. It is poo-poo. Next is another World Loot Pool, the Battle Scar. This is one of my personal favorites in PvE. In PvP, it has some pretty good perk combos like Keep Away, Perpetual Motion with Headseeker or Eye of the Storm. The origin trait isn't horrible if you do find yourself surviving quite a lot in your games, but it is still a lightweight frame. And even though it's got good perks, there are other lightweight frames which do what this one does, but miles better. It's for sure better than the Ogma, but not that good in the grand scheme of things. This one's going to be finding itself in the F tier. Next up is the Nightshade from, I believe, Zur or Banshee. I'm not sure which one can sell them, it might be both. This one is in the same slot as the Battle Scar, but it also gets more PvP perks. The stats are very similar except the stability, which can become much higher with ricochet rounds. Both the origin traits I do believe are better because they apply more in the short round based modes. That's stuff like Trials or some modes in Compet. It's also Strand, so you get a little bit of synergy there. I would say this one falls into the C tier. Still not that good. Taking a huge step up, we have the Chattering Bone from the Last Wish raid. This one is craftable and it can get some pretty insane perks. You can pair Kill Clip with Headseeker or Rampage, or even Focus Fury if you're about that edgy life. It also gets Keep Away or Rapid Hit, but to be honest, Rapid Hit is very overrated on these 3-round burst pulse rifles. I would say Kill Clip and Headseeker is best for 6v6 based game modes. You can just chain kills like crazy and still get the accuracy benefits of Headseeker. You can go for Rampage instead of Headseeker, but I do find the Headseeker is extremely nice for the accuracy buffs. And for 3v3s, you can go for Keep Away and Headseeker. This is likely the best lightweight pulse in the entire game. I'm going to rank it into the A- tier. Yep, It might be the best lightweight frame, but lightweight frames just aren't that good. The next lightweight frame is the Stay Frosty from the Christmas Dawning events. We don't know which perks this gun will get this year, but we can go off what it has last year. It can get Moving Target Head Seeker for a nice consistent roll, or you can run Killing Wind or Tunnel Vision or Encore paired with Kill Clip or Desperado. There are many good combos on this gun, but it does fall quite short to the Chattering Bone, especially because they are in the same slot. However, this one is stasis, so you can build into stuff like Diamond Lances. The origin trait is actually decent, to be fair, and I believe it's the only lightweight frame to get Desperado, so it's definitely unique. I do think it is miles better than Nightshade, but definitely worse than Chattering Bone, so I do think that B tier is suitable for the Stay Frosty. But who knows, the gun that releases this year might get some insane perks, and it might even be on par or better than the Chattering Bone. But to be honest, I don't think it will go higher than A- tier, even if it has the best perks in the game, because lightweight frames just don't feel very good at all. Next up is our first exotic of the tier list, that is Outbreak Perfected from the 0 Hour Exotic Mission. This one is also craftable, so you can pick what barrels, mags and stock you want, as well as a selection of 4 perks. Only one of these perks is good for PvP in my opinion, and that one is Head Seeker. A thing to note about Outbreak Perfected is that its recoil is actually coded the same as an auto rifle. That's why it feels really stable despite the stability being super low. That also means that you don't really need rapid hit at all. So when it comes to crafting the Outbreak Perfected, you don't actually need to spec that much into stability unless you are specking into anti-flinch. With all of that being said, I'm going to recommend small bore, accurized rounds, Head Seeker with short action stock. You can also run full bore for an extra meter of range if the flinch doesn't bother you too much. So obviously I'm assuming you guys know what Outbreak does. You get a headshot kill and then the nanites spawn in. A neat thing about Head Seeker and the nanites is that when the nanites actually do damage, that does proc Head Seeker. So that means Head Seeker is going to be proccing a lot more than any other pulse in the game really. In general, the pulse feels pretty nice, except it is a lightweight frame. When it comes to 1v1s, you don't really feel that lethal, but if there's a scenario where it's my team versus their team, my team would always team shot one guy, and provided I get the final blow, those nanites really did help out to clean up the rest of the enemies. So it can be very good for enemies which are bunched up really close together, but from my experience that hardly ever happens. Outbreak Perfected also comes with 3 nice ornaments. There might be more, but I can only really see 3 here. I even went out my way to buy this fallen kind of ornament because it really does make the model a lot nicer to shoot, and even then it didn't really help it much. Due to this pulse's lack of ability to 1v1, I'm gonna have to put it into the B tier. If it were any other frame of pulse, it would probably be in S tier, but Bungie had to nerf it somehow. The next pulse rifle is technically not a lightweight frame, but still receives all the benefits of one, and it also inherits the same TTK and damage profile. It quite literally is a lightweight frame, but with a halo mask on it. We are of course talking about the BXR Battler from the 30th anniversary, and yeah, this is very much a Halo gun. It's a special kind of lightweight frame which allows you to hip fire with incredible accuracy. The stats on this gun are really bloody good, and the sights are magnificent. It gets access to perpetual motion and kill clip. That's probably the only perk combo that I think is worth using, but unfortunately it has the same damage profile as a lightweight frame. This is probably one of the best feeling pulses in the game, if only it had a different frame, and because of that it's going to tie up with Chattering Bone in the A- tier. The last lightweight for this video is the exotic Bad Juju from, I believe, the exotic kiosk in the tower. On paper, this thing should be really good. It should be a really good kill chaining weapon, but it just isn't. The range is bad and the frame of course is horrible. The weapon feel lacks anything good. The exotic perk is essentially just Rampage and Thresh into one. After your first kill, your TTK decreases by 1 shot, so that's nice. After 2 kills, you just get a bit more forgiveness. After 3 kills, it decreases it by another shot, so you can now 2 burst. So the TTK has decreased by quite a lot. 4 stacks means more forgiveness, and 5 stacks decreases the TTK even more. This gun does really well in momentum control, as you don't have to reload at all. You can just keep on chaining kills. But in every other game mode, it is pretty mid. I'm going to put this one into the C tier. Now that all the lightweight frame weapons are out the way, let's move on to the second worst archetype. That would be the rapid fire frames. Don't be deceived by the low ranking. These pulses actually do feel really good. They naturally have super low stats, but they shoot super fast. The range suffers on these typically, and the optimal TTK is 0.8 seconds. On a tier 6 Resilience Guardian and higher, you would have to be about 88.9% accurate on 7 resiliences or higher for the optimal TTK. But these pulses shoot so fast that if you do miss a few shots, it's not that deep because you can recover recover quite quickly, or that at least is compared to the other slower shooting pulses. So yeah, this archetype is really easy to use because you can miss quite a few shots and still be a bit more competitive, but the range on these is really bad and it does hold them back quite a bit, unfortunately. We're gonna begin the fast shooters with the monstrosity of a pulse, the Outlast. I do believe Xur can sell this, and I think Banshee, but it only really gets 2 good perk combos, and even then I wouldn't really bother going through. Those perks are Keep Away and maybe Encore with Kill Clip. The stats are god awful and the sights are pretty mid, quite clunky, and the gun doesn't perform that well at all. This one's going in the F tier. Different Times is from Season of the Deep also, and it can be sold by Xur or Banshee, I believe. You can craft it. It can either be really good or super cheeks. The stats are what really defines this gun, and the perks are fine, I guess, but the stats by themselves at base are complete ass. You do get Moving Target and Headseeker, but I want to draw your attention to the Origin trait. This gives massive stat bumps when you have no abilities charged at all. That is especially good in hardware game modes because you don't have abilities full stop, so it is always procced and you don't need to worry about wasting your abilities as quick as you can. That being said, without Unsated Hunger procced, this pulse sucks ass. It's going to be going into the F tier in non-hardware game modes, but it's going to be in the A+ tier in hardware game modes. Very similar to how I ranked the Targeted Reduction in the hand cannon tier list. It feels very nice with the Origin trait procced, complete cheeks without it. Next up is the Grid Skipper from Season of the Splicer. I believe Xur can sell this gun now, and just to be straight with you, this thing has terrible stats and bad perks, but it actually feels really nice. There is something about the Splicer weapon set which just, they're all coded really good, and I'm not sure why it is. You just have to try it out to see what I mean. Give it Frenzy and Moving Target if you can survive a long time in a game, and it can be super duper nice. The best other perk I guess is Multi-Kill Clip, and that's not that good. It's going to be put into the C tier, even though it does have bad perks and stats. It for sure is better than the Outlast. The next 2 pulses, I'm going to be ranking them together because they are just so similar. They are both arc, they're both rapid fire frames, they both serve essentially the same purpose. The 2 pulses I'm talking about are the Oversoul Edict from Crota's End and Horror's Least from Nightfall Strikes. You can craft Oversoul Edict and it does have an Adept variant. You can target farm the Horror's Least, but you can't get the Adept version anymore. They might bring it back sometime in the future. In fact, they most likely will because that's what Banshee does. But I'm still going to be ranking the Horror's Least as if it is the Adept version. These guns are very similar. They are both 6v6 slaying machines. Horror's Least gets the Kill Clip perk, which is obviously very good for kill chaining. Oversoul Edict gets the Sword Logic perk, which is exclusive to the Crota weapons, as far as I'm aware. The difference between Kill Clip and Sword Logic is that Kill Clip gets 5% extra damage, but it also requires you to reload to activate the buff. Sword Logic just activates straight away. It doesn't require a reload. Sword Logic also lasts 2.5 seconds longer, 3.5 seconds if you have the enhanced version. In the left column, Oversoul gets Keep Away, where Horror's Least doesn't. Oversoul for sure has more options in terms of perk combos, so I'm going to be putting both of them in the A+ tier, but I do think Horror's Least is slightly worse. I'm going to be ranking 2 more pulses together because they are again essentially the exact same. We have Peace of Mind, which I believe Banshee can sell. I know Xur can, I'm not 100% sure about Banshee. And we also have Autumn Wind from Crucible. You can craft the Peace of Mind and you can also get multiple perks for the Autumn Wind. I don't believe you can enhance the perks on the Autumn Wind, but you definitely can on the Peace of Mind because it is craftable. They are both essentially the exact same weapon, except Peace of Mind has 1 more zoom stat and Autumn Wind gets access to Headseeker. They both have a benefit over the other one, but from what I've seen and what I've played with, the Peace of Mind definitely feels nicer, and that is likely due to the extra zoom stat. Both are very good and are pretty much direct competition, but I do personally prefer Peace of Mind. I'm going to be putting Peace of Mind into the A+ tier with Autumn Wind at the A- tier. I don't think that Headseeker is enough to bring it out of the A-, and that single zoom stat actually does help quite a bit. Claws of the Wolf is from Iron Banner. Its god roll is essentially the same as Horror's Least, so it's pretty much direct competition with that and Oversoul Edict. You do have Headseeker, but I think the stats on these rapid fires are just so damn bad that you almost have to run Perpetual Motion, otherwise they sort of just feel cheats. The gun itself feels okay, it's nothing too crazy. It's got a little bit of a glare issue. The Origin trait is fine, it can work sometimes. Just due to the bad stats, I'm going to be putting this one into the B tier. Having Headseeker and Kill Clip at the same time is very nice, but again, the stats are too low to even think about running that. There are 2 pulses which come from the Prophecy dungeon, and the first one that we're going to be looking at is the Darkest Before. It gets perks like Elemental Capacitor and Kill Clip, Headseeker. You can enhance these perks, which is very nice. If you do use this pulse on an arc subclass, you can get a lovely +50 handling, and I believe it's like 55 with with enhanced. You can also go for void, which will give you 20 stability, 25 on enhanced, but to be honest I think the handling is much more favorable. Now the reason you would go for elemental capacitor on this compared to claws on the wolf is because claws doesn't really have that high stability. Darkest Before can get pretty decent stability even without perpetual motion. The origin trait is actually really good. The only issue with this gun is it's a pain to get, but I'm not going to be factoring that into the ranking. I'm going to put this one into the A- tier. The last rapid fire frame on this list will be the Scalar Potential. I believe Xur or Banshee can sell this, I'm not entirely sure. This thing isn't too good to be honest. You can craft it with Keep Away and Headseeker, but the stats are just complete cheeks. I've seen more and more people use High Ground recently on different guns, so it might be really good on this one. Golden Tripgon is there as a budget kind of sword logic perk. This pulse is desperately trying to replace the Oversoul Edict or even the Horror's Least, but it just isn't doing a very good job at that. The other two pulses do what this one does, but miles better. This one goes in the B tier. With all the rapid fire frames done and dusted, we can move on to the next frame, being the pretty new heavy burst frame. This is the only frame of Pulse which has 2 shots in each burst compared to the regular 3. The optimal TTK is the exact same as the lightweight frames. However, this frame of Pulse has really good range and a pretty good feel in my opinion. You'll have the same forgiveness and TTK on all Resilience Guardians, and that's about 83.3% accurate for the optimal 0.7 second TTK. Because it shoots a bit slower with less bullets per burst, missing shots will increase your time to kill so much more than the other frames. Even then, this frame typically feels quite sticky but requires a bit more skill than the other ones in my opinion. There are only 5 weapons in this frame, excluding the adept variants of some of these. So the first one we're going to be looking at is the Curation from the current season we're in. Sorry, the current episode we're in. You can craft this and get perpetual motion with Eye of the Storm, Focus Fury or High Ground. Initially when I crafted this for the first time, I put Eye of the Storm on it, but later on I swapped to Focus Fury. Now before you get mad at me, you have to realize something. The mag isn't actually 30 as it says in the API. That's just a visual bug. It actually has 18 in the mag when you're in game. So you only need to land 9 headshots to proc it. And that is really easy to proc. But to be honest, you are probably better off with Frenzy or High Ground. They are just far more consistent and require a lot less commitment to proc. This gun feels decent in terms of pulse rifles in general, but compared to the other 2 bursts, it's not too good. I'm going to be putting this one into the B tier. Next is the Nullify from Salvation's Edge, the Raid. You can craft the regular version of this or farm for the adept one, both can get enhanced perks. It gets decent-ish perks I guess. A nice combo can be Demolitionist and Chaos Reshape for someone who can survive for quite a bit in a game. Rapid Hit is also an option, but to be honest, the stat bumps are so bad per burst. It obviously isn't a terrible perk, but I think there are better options. You can use Separate Measures or Multi-Kill Clip also. It's got options, you know, just not a lot of insane ones. The Origin trait is actually pretty good, provided the range and handling bonus isn't too low. And as a full disclaimer, I haven't actually used this pulse yet, so I can't talk much about the feel, but I have heard very good things about it. I'm going to put this one in the A- tier. Next is the Aisha's Care from Trials of Osiris. This pulse was the flawless drop from the weekend that just passed, so I grinded the hell out of it to get every roll that I wanted, and indeed I did. I managed to get Keep Away with Moving Target, Kill Clip, Desperado and Headseeker, and Keep Away is all I really wanted in the left. There are some other perks that people might recommend like Zen Moment or Encore, but if you know me, you know that I'm an active Zen Moment hater, and Encore isn't really needed because the base stats are already just so good. Now the main reason I wanted to use all of these perks is because we haven't really got them before on a pulse rifle like this. So the first roll I tested was Keep Away and Moving Target, and that felt great. The reason that felt so good is because this pulse archetype has 2 main issues in my opinion. That would be the targeting and also the TTK. This roll fixes the targeting issue very well. The next roll I used was Keep Away and Desperado, and that felt fine I guess. I was really expecting more, but once you did get Desperado procced, it really did melt, but to be honest, it still required you to hit 5 headshots and a body shot for the optimal TTK. Overall, it's a nice perk and it definitely helps you to like recover any shots that you miss. Kill Clip helped you to get the 3 burst easier by allowing you to miss a shot and also still being able to hit a body shot. So the 3 burst was much easier, but of course it's still a 3 burst. The next roll I used was Headseeker and Keep Away. This one felt really nice for the targeting bonuses. I did do a little bit of math and I don't believe Headseeker can actually help your forgiveness at all for the optimal TTK. So you're still going to have to hit the 5 headshots and 1 body shot, but the targeting and the extra damage can help with the damage fall off ever so slightly. Something I did find with this pulse and this archetype in general, they are very good when you have Radiant procced. That will actually decrease your TTK and they just feel a lot more consistent. So I imagine on a hunter with the Acrobat's Dodge, I believe it's called, if you use that with any of these 2 burst pulses, you're laughing. I'm going to put Aisha's Care into the A+ tier. it definitely is the best legendary 2-burst in the game. There is only one other 2-burst which is better, and we'll get into that in just a bit. The next exotic is the Graviton Lance, and first of all, the stats are insane. You can see that. And its exotic perk makes the second shot of the burst have no damage fall off whatsoever. So that's technically more ranged than a sniper, which is wild to say. As for the feel of this gun, it does feel pretty sticky, to be honest, and the shots do land. However, currently when I was testing this gun, or at least when I was putting it side by side with the other 2 bursts, it is bugged. Bungie have addressed this, and I do believe that they are working on a fix, but it currently does shoot slower than it's supposed to. So in the gameplay in the background, you are seeing the gun in its bugged state, and it doesn't really feel good at all. I'm going to be ranking it in its normal state, not the bugged version, and I have used this weapon quite a lot in the past, and I can vouch for it, but it's still not incredible. I do believe it deserves B tier. In its current state, the bugged state, it's going to be going into the F tier, so until Bungie release a fix, I would highly recommend not using this. Now this next pulse is going to be more than just a ranking. I'm going to be doing a mini breakdown of it because there is just so much to unpack with this pulse. It is one of my personal favorite primaries in the entire game. It is more than likely my favorite exotic primary currently, and that is the Revision 0. This exotic pulse rifle is craftable, and it has 2 different firing modes which you can swap on the fly. Well, not really on the fly, you have to go to your character and swap them as if they're 2 different perks. But you get what I mean. It can either shoot in a 2-burst or a 4-burst. I personally do prefer the 4-burst much more, but the 2-burst is still really good. Another thing about this pulse is that if you accumulate enough headshots without dying, it will turn into a very high damage sniper shot. Now this sniper rifle mode has super high zoom, and you can charge up to 4 shots. A single shot can kill any super in the game. It does so much damage. Also, the hip fire accuracy of the sniper shot is actually really good. I believe it just takes the normal hip fire accuracy of the pulse, so hitting the headshots with the sniper from the hip is so easy. The stats on this pulse are actually incredible, and the perk selection is really good. You have access to perpetual motion, moving target, elemental capacitor, and Eye of the Storm. These are the only ones that I see to be relevant. I have tried almost every single combination on this gun, so here's what I found. I would always run under pressure in the final column purely because of the sniper rifle shot. You're only really going to be charging the shot when you have 1 or 2, so under pressure will always be active for the sniper rifle shot. If you are playing arc or prism, you can use elemental capacitor for the plus 50 handling. I wouldn't really bother putting on a void super because the 20 stability isn't needed because the stats can get so high anyway. So if you are going with the plus 50 handling, you can spec everything else into range and stability. If you don't run arc or prismatic like me, I'm a solar warlock main. I used to run perpetual motion quite a lot and almost exclusively in the 4-burst mode. I would typically use rifled barrel, high cal, fitted stock with perpetual motion, and typically I'd use Ophidian aspects, so the handling was still really high. The 90 stability was already plenty, so I see more value in the high cal rather than the ricochet for the extra flinch. If you were to go with perpetual motion for the 2-burst, I would say use fluted barrel and ricochet rounds. However, currently I use a different setup. Because I only ever really use Ophidian aspects, I run corkscrew rifling, ricochet rounds, moving target, fitted stock. The reason I use fitted stock in all of these combos is for the 100 recoil direction, and that can make a difference. Moving target makes the weapon feel even nicer. I do run this typically with the 4-burst. I don't use the 2-burst much. The main reason is because the 4-burst charges the sniper rifle shot much quicker than the 2-burst, but if I were to use the 2-burst, I would run fluted barrel, and that's all I would change. Having the ability to change to the 2-burst whenever you want is actually really nice. The gun feels incredible, the range is insane, stability is magnificent, and the feeling of this weapon is the best thing I've felt since I felt you. Oh god. Please don't cancel me. I'm going to be putting Revision 0 into the S tier, and if you want to break the 4-burst and the 2-burst apart, they would still likely go in the S tier. This gun is seriously incredible. I can't think of one bad thing about it. Now we can move on to the next archetype, the adaptive frames. Now this frame and the next 2 are pretty close in my opinion, but this one definitely falls short compared to the other 2, as the optimal TTK is a whopping 0.93 seconds. That is the slowest TTK of any frame of pulse. However, if we have learned anything from the meta, it should be this. The slower the TTK does not always mean the worse the weapon. Take 120 hand cannons for an example. Their time to kill is a whole second, yet they're some of the best weapons in the game. These adaptive frames are very similar. They have a very slow TTK, yet they just feel so damn good. As a quick disclaimer, the only perk that I find to make this archetype feel remotely as good as I'm describing it is Headseeker. That perk sort of just transforms these adaptive frames, and I'm not entirely sure why. Now the reason the TTK is so damn low on these adaptive frames is because it takes 3 bursts to kill, which is pretty normal, except these don't really shoot that fast. Now in the third burst, you only need to land 1 shot. So if you're going to be 3 bursting a Guardian anyway, that means you can miss 2 entire shots, and they both don't have to be in the last burst. That's probably why this archetype feels so damn good. It's the forgiveness. You're going to have to be 85.7% accurate to get the optimal TTK. This is probably the most forgiving frame of pulse, and the stats on them generally aren't that bad. The range is pretty respectable on them. So for the first pulse, we're going to be looking at the Hailing Confusion from Europa. It sucks. That's all. Poo poo. Next is Smite of Moraine from the King's Fall raid. The regular version is craftable, and you can also get the Adept one. You can get Moving Target and Eye of the Storm, and that seems to be the best combo. The gun itself doesn't feel too good. Nothing is too outstanding about this pulse. The origin trait is kind of dog. The stats are mid. This one goes in C tier. Next is the Adorative. This doesn't really have any good PvP perks except Headseeker and Moving Target in the right. Golden Tricorn is decent, but the gun isn't too good. It feels kind of strange. F tier. If you can't tell, I'm just trying to get through the bad ones so we can get onto the good ones, so just bear with me. Forge's Pledge is from Iron Banner. It's not great, it's not worth farming at all, don't even look at it, F tier. Next up is Yesteryear from Gambit. This is the only adaptive frame that gets Desperado, so that is nice. I've never actually used this pulse because I just don't do Gambit, so I can't really talk much on its feel, but I am very familiar with the weapon model, and I can vouch for them. They are very good. It's got 2 really good origin traits. Perpetual Motion in the left. I'm going to say this one is in the A tier. It does seem pretty good for 6v6. Third Axiom is from Strikes and can get good perks like Moving Target or Headseeker with Elemental Capacitor. Some people will try and argue Slide Shot, but this perk only works on the very first shot, not for the full burst. Slideways isn't terrible, the stats aren't horrible, it doesn't really feel like anything special when you shoot it. This one will go into the B tier. Next is the Collective Obligation from Vow of the Disciple raid. This pulse has no real PvP purpose other than a specific build that I can think of just on the top of my head. That would be the Blink Warlock exotic. You can just blink and then shoot whoever was near you to leech that volatile debuff. Then anyone you shoot for 14 seconds will be volatile. That can be pretty neat, but other than that, the gun just feels horrible to shoot. I even have the ornament to make the gun feel less clunky, but it still feels terrible. I'm gonna say this one goes into the F tier. The only reason it's not going into the poo-poo tier is because of the void applications it can have. Right, so that should be all of the bad ones out the way. Let's move on to the good ones. Jorum's Claw is from Iron Banner, and it's one of my personal favorite energy pulses in the game. It gets Moving Target with Headseeker or Kill Clip or even Golden Tricorn if you're about that life, and this pulse seriously feels like a dream. I'm not sure what it is. It might be the scope, it might just be the model in general, but it just hits heads like nothing else, except the next pulse, which we'll get into in just a minute. But before we do, let's talk about the stats. They are great. The origin trait is lovely. This pulse will be going into the S tier. I just can't seem to lose with this gun on. Like seriously, gotta try this. The next pulse is the Syncopation, which is a craftable world drop. It gets the same god roll as Jorum's Claw and very similar stats with the same origin traits, essentially got the same weapon model. You know, this gun is quite literally just a stasis version of Jorum's Claw. The only difference is it has 2 more zoom, and to be honest, it does make quite a bit of a difference. The 2 extra zoom feels insanely nice. There isn't much else which I need to say about this because it's literally just Jorum's Claw but blue. So this one's going into the S tier. It genuinely feels incredible. It's underrated as hell. Due to Bungie unsunsetting a lot of these weapons that we used to have, the next pulse I believe to be very, very relevant these days, even though I've never seen anyone use one recently. That pulse rifle is the Bygones from Forsaken Time, I believe. This pulse is actually incredible. Back in the day, this used to be my favorite pulse in the game of all time, but I have since dismantled it. I was very low on vault space, and I was under the impression that weapons would never be unsunset, so don't judge me. This pulse can get Headseeker and Kill Clip together at the same time, simultaneously. That's insane. Everyone used to love this pulse. It was the meta for a very long time. This is likely the best adaptive frame pulse in the game, which really sucks because you just can't get it anymore. S tier for sure. Now we can move on to the next frame of pulses, being the aggressive frames. This is the archetype which shoots 4 bullets per burst. The optimal TTK is 0.73 seconds and requires 100% accuracy on anything 8 resilience or higher. Anything below keeps the same TTK but at 87.5% accuracy. So if we're taking the worst case scenario, yep, you need to be 100% accurate to get the optimal TTK. But trust me, if you haven't used these pulses before, that happens a lot more than you think. It's not incredibly hard to get the optimal TTK, the 100% accuracy, but it's not that easy. The pulses in this archetype typically feel very sticky and they have really good range, but they typically do lack handling. In a team setting, these are very good, very good team shoot weapons. As a solo player, I do believe that they require a bit more skill than the other pulses, but I am by no means saying that these pulses require skill. No pulses in the game require skill. let's not lie. The first 4 burst is the blast furnace from Into the Light. This pulse is genuinely incredible. I think I'm going to break the world record of the amount of times incredible has been said in a single video. This one definitely earns that title. In the left you can get perpetual motion, keep away, or head seeker. In the right you can get kill clip or even frenzy. Now I know before I've said that rapid hit isn't that good on pulses because the stat bumps just aren't that good compared to perpetual motion, but I will make an exception for the 4 bursts. You can actually get 4 stacks just after 1 burst, which can be really nice. But if you have the option of perpetual motion or rapid hit, I think everyone should be picking perpetual motion over rapid hit any single day of the week. But in this case they're in 2 different columns, so you could go for both of them and just double down on the consistency, but I really don't think it's needed. I think kill clip is much more valuable. I never got to try a head seeker and kill clip roll. I really want to, and I've been grinding for it, it just hasn't dropped. I've tried keep away and perpetual motion both with kill clip, they both felt really good. The recoil direction on this gun is best when it's unchanged or if it's at 100, so either 65 or 100, nothing between. And if you have the choice, choose 65 because then you can spec everything else out into the other stats, because the difference between 65 and 100 isn't crazy at all. You probably won't even notice it. This is for sure one of the best legendary pulses in the game, probably one of the best pulses in the game, but I hardly see anyone running it. This one's definitely going into the S tier, no doubts there. From competitive, we have the Belisarius D.
Belisarius.
This pulse has really good stats with really good perks. However, it doesn't feel that good at all. Well, I mean, yeah, it feels fine, but not good enough to compete with the other 4 bursts. You can get keep away, elemental capacitor, rapid hit. In the right, you got kill clip, moving target, head seeker, many good combos, and you also got access to stocks, which is really nice. But then again, the weapon doesn't feel great, and that really does let it down. It's gonna go in the A- tier. It's not like the feeling ruins it, it just doesn't feel as good as I hoped. Unfortunately, from the kiosk in the tower, we have the Velis X. I say unfortunately because if this wasn't so easy to get, I wouldn't deem it relevant enough to be in this video. It is just so bad. I'm not going to talk much on it. This goes in the poo-poo tier. Another pretty bad 4 burst pulse comes from Val the Disciple raid, and it's called the Insidious. There aren't really any good perk combos here. The origin trait sucks. Stats are kinda eh. It's better than Velis X though, but it's still bad. F tier. Disparity can be sold by Zer, and I believe Banshee can also. It is craftable and you can get moving target or rapid hit with head seeker or kill clip or desperado. This one is super good in 6v6. It's still pretty decent in 3v3. The sights are amazing, and in general it just feels really nice. The ambush origin trait is actually really good. The stats are kinda eh, but this one still finds itself in the A+ tier. Another underrated pulse. And now from everybody's favorite raid in the game, Garden of Salvation, we have Sacred Provenance. The gun feels fine, I guess. Back in the day when it first released, it was pretty good. It was quite the powerhouse. So now it's sort of just been power crept. It's got decent enough perks to keep it in the B tier. It's very much the definition of mid when it comes to 4 bursts. This one's going in the B tier. The next gun is an exotic, which actually isn't an aggressive burst, but it's the closest frame to it. That's why I've put it here. That is the Vigilance Wing. This pulse rifle has 5 in the burst, so that makes it the longest burst in the game in terms of pulse rifles. This gun thrives when your teammates die, so if you often find yourself with bad teammates, this is the gun for you. It's definitely much better in 6s than it is 3s, mainly because you have more teammates dying per second, I guess you could say. And when they do die, you actually do feel the benefits of the exotic perk quite a bit. It's got a 0.77 TTK, and you have to be pretty damn accurate to get that. Regardless, it hits heads super well. It's also got a few ornaments to make it feel a lot nicer. I do have the one which makes it feel best, and that definitely does make a difference. So if you are really invested in this gun, I would recommend buying that ornament. And again, it is Destiny 2 the video game. Who the hell wants to spend money on silver? This gun is going to land itself in the A+ tier. I think more people should be using this. The last frame of pulse I believe to be the best of all, the high impact frames. This frame is very similar to the previous 4 burst frame, except I think it is definitely much easier to use in my opinion. They typically have a little bit less range and share the same 100% accuracy for the optimal TTK, except the optimal TTK is 0.67 seconds. And having that at base with no buffs or anything, that is pretty insane. That is in fact as quick as a rapid fire frame with swashbuckler ×5 or even rampage ×3, except it does require 100% accuracy. And that is for anyone that's 7 resilience or higher. If you're fighting someone that's 6 resilience or lower, it's going to be taking 83.3% accuracy, so that lets you hit 1 body shot. But from what I've seen, the 100% accuracy is not really that hard to hit. I do believe this archetype is the best archetype in the game. With all of that being said, we can move on to the first pulse, which is from Into the Light, and it's the Elsie's rifle. This pulse is actually insane. It gets keep away with head seeker or desperado or kill clip. Its origin trait is not too bad for a little bit of energy regen regen. The stats are great. I haven't talked much about recoil direction in this video, but for this gun specifically, I find it to be best with a plus 10 recoil direction boost. So I've done a bunch of testing on the recoil direction, and I found that 85 is the best for it, except you can't actually reach the number 85. The closest you can get is 83, and that is with just a regular plus 10 bonus to the base recoil direction. So that would be something like chambered compensator or extended barrel. This gun hits heads super well. It adopts the same weapon model as No Time to Explain, the exotic. You can get some pretty nice 2 burst with this gun, especially with keep away. Don't use Zen Moment, please. This one of course ranks in the S tier. From the world loot pool, we have the Psi Hermetic V. This pulse is pretty decent. It can get elemental capacitor or moving target with kill clip or head seeker, or even perpetual motion in the right. You hardly ever see perpetual motion in the right. The wildcard origin trait is actually pretty good. This pulse in general feels pretty consistent, but not as good as the other high impact frames. Nevertheless, the perk combos are pretty good with great stats, so I believe this pulse to be A+ worthy. This one is a fairly underrated pulse in my opinion. From the recently revised Prophecy dungeon, we have the Relentless. This one's able to get keep away in the left and Desperado or head seeker or moving target in the right. Some pretty good and consistent perk combos here. The origin trait is actually really good, and the pulse in general just feels really nice. This one will be going into the A+ tier. From the Duality dungeon, we have New Purpose. Somehow, this pulse ranking might be the most controversial that I've done, so I am very ready for the heat in the comments. But this gun actually feels incredible. Sure, you might say on paper it doesn't seem that good, but in game, when you shoot this thing, when you see that clean 2 burst, it's a different kind of gravy, guys. This pulse actually slaps. Now, I've always liked this pulse since it released. Something about it might be the sights or the weapon model, it just feels really nice. You can get Perpetual Motion and Desperado, and that is pretty much the only worthwhile perk combo in my opinion. The best I've ever gotten was Perpetual Motion and Harmony. The origin trait is kind of ass. You can't enhance the perks, and the stats just aren't great. So like I said, on paper this thing doesn't feel very good at all, except the weapon feel and the way it can 2 burst is insane. That's why I'm going to be ranking this in the A+ tier. If it had better perks or better stats, it would probably be in the S tier. Again, I'm ready for the hate in the comments, but you seriously gotta try this pulse. From Neomuna, we have the Philotactic Spiral. This one is craftable and it can get keep away and kill clip, head seeker, elemental capacitor. The origin trait is pretty good and can clutch sometimes. It feels really nice. Initially, I was going to put this one in the A+ tier, but after trying it out more, it just felt more and more consistent compared to the other high impact frames. It gets some of the cleanest 2 bursts I've ever shot. This pulse used to be very popular back when it released, but now I don't really see anyone using it. In fact, I don't think I've seen anyone use it since the final shape drop, and I can still confidently say that this one is still an S tier pulse. If you can, please craft it. Next up, from Trials of Osiris, we have the Messenger. Now, I think everyone's always known that this pulse is good. No one's ever really doubted that. But when I was retesting it, putting it up against the rest of the high impact frames, I think I can confidently conclude that this is the best legendary pulse in the game. Not just the best high impact, this is the best legendary pulse in the game. And to be 100% honest, I'm not entirely sure why. Yes, the stats are insane. Yes, the perks are crazy. The sights are nice. But I typically use Perpetual Motion and kill clip. That is 0 accuracy buffs, and it still feels the nicest to 2 burst in the entire game. You can also get head seeker, keep away, moving target. I did indeed try the keep away head seeker roll and also moving target keep away. Both of them I was just doubling down on the accuracy, and that was nice, but the perpetual motion and kill clip roll felt the best somehow. Nothing in this roll is really helping you get the 2 burst, maybe except the stability from perpetual motion, but it still felt the best. Especially with kill clip procced, you kind of feel unstoppable. The origin trait is also good. You've got the option of the Trials origin trait or the wildcard one. Everything about this pulse just ticks all the boxes. This one is for sure going in the S tier. It's sort of just like the chaperone for pulses, if you know what I mean. Somehow from the Crucible, we have the Stars in Shadow, and it is still relevant. This pulse only really gets quick draw in the left and head seeker in the right, with kill clip, moving target, ellie cap. The gun feels okay. It's pretty standard, to be honest. The origin trait is borderline useless. The stats aren't really good. I think this one's very mid. I'm going to put it in the B tier. The next gun is Exotic, and it used to be everyone's favorite primary at one point. Now, hardly anyone really uses it. We are talking about the No Time to Explain. The pulse still feels great, and the mini turret you get from the Exotic perk is really nice. Getting ammo back for every headshot is also a nice thing to have. The stats are decent, I guess. I think more people should be picking this up every now and then. It can be a nice feeling weapon. It still performs pretty well. This one's going in the A+ tier. The last pulse of this tier list is likely another very controversial one, and that is the Red Death. And I'm just going to give it to you guys straight. This thing doesn't feel good. Dare I say it feels bad. perchance. The recoil on this is actually really good because it's also coded as an auto rifle, just like Outbreak. As far as I'm aware, at least, that could be wrong. The healing factor of it is really nice, but I'm not gonna lie, I think the way it shoots with its negative recoil, it just throws me off. 2 bursts are a pipe dream. This is probably one of the harder pulses to 2 burst with, on mouse and keyboard at least. I can't speak for this gun on controller, it might be insane. I get far more 2 bursts with other pulses like Philotactic Spiral or even Stars in Shadow. Something feels wrong about this, and I'm sorry to all you people that stand this weapon. That being said, it isn't a horrible pulse. I think the way I've spoken so far, it feels a bit exaggerated. It's definitely not that bad. It's still going to be going into the A- tier, but it is pretty close to dropping to the B tier. Right, that should just about conclude the most accurate pulse rifle tier list ever made. Taking a look, we can see that the majority of the relevant pulse rifles are actually pretty good. I would consider anything above and not including B tier to be considerably good, and clearly high impact frames just dominate the tier list. But in general, I would say that pulse rifles are actually in a really good spot right now in the current meta. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of my rankings down in the comments. I do try to respond to all of them, so if I don't respond to yours, then I'm sorry. Also, let me know what tier list you want next. I was thinking of doing SMGs. Leave a like if you found this video informative or entertaining at all, and subscribe for more PvP content. I appreciate you guys watching this video. I hope to see you soon. Bye bye now.